Okay, so we are starting a work of this, I think, the second panel today, and this is the panel with the title, The Role of Political Foundations and Think Tanks. Political foundations, as well as think tanks, were in many consolidated democracies established decades ago, while in new democracies, such organizations are a more recent phenomenon. And particularly in consolidated democracies, both types of organizations have become more prominent actors in policy-making processes, able and willing to offer political actors, being governments, political parties, or parliaments, their research findings, even a concrete advice or solution concerning particular public policy, but their attention is focused on broader social changes, broader social issues and developments in today's society. Although it's sometimes hard to draw a line between political foundations and think tanks, it seems political foundations, which are in Europe as a rule, close to individual party families, they also have a broader objective, a broader purpose, despite usually major characteristics of all such organizations, is that they do party-related work like general information about the ideological cause, training of volunteers, publication of pamphlets, and so on. But at least the most prominent political foundations are usually treated foundations from Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, and also political foundations on the European level have among their objectives also promotion of political participation, active citizenship, political education, and so on. And all this with the aim of promoting good governance and opportunities for civil society participation. And even though it is evident that both political foundations and think tanks are present in political and social life, it is still a question of influence, or let's say also impact they have on political decision makers, public policies, and let's say also on political socialization and education of the population at large. And of course the question is what actually determine their impact or influence in this regard. Let's say this was a short introduction from my side, but now I'm going to give a word to participants who are going to present their respective organizations, whether this is a political foundation or it is a think tank. I would like to introduce all four participants very shortly. On my right, an extreme right, yes, is Suzanne Hartig. She's coming from the European Liberal Forum, a European political foundation. European Liberal Forum was established in 2007 and brings together liberal think tanks, political foundations, and institutes from around Europe. Then Jelena Milic is coming from Serbia, and she is a coordinator of the Center of Euro-Atlantic Studies in Belgrade. The center is left liberal orientated think tank, and it was founded in 2007. Ana Radicevic is coming from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and she's a resident program manager of the National Democratic Institute. The institute was founded in mid-80s, and together with its local partners have worked to establish and strengthen political and civic organizations, safeguard elections, and promote citizen participation, openness, and accountability of governments. And Bojan Maricic is coming from the Macedonian Center for European Training, which was established in 2002. Initially, the center was established as a training institute, but in 2007 became a think tank and a watchdog organization. Yeah. And as it was agreed, actually, with the organizer, All participants are going to present their organizations, but I would also like to ask them to evaluate a role, an impact, influence of each respective organization in policy making, policy decision, and in general, let's say also in more political processes in their environments. But after their presentations, of course, also the audience is going to be invited to take an active part on the panel, on the conference, either by making comments or raising some questions. But the first, I'm going to give a word to our panelists, and the first is Susanne Hartig, so the floor is yours.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, dear liberal friends, I'm very pleased to speak today to you from and on behalf of the European Liberal Forum and to talk about the very important issue of our impact on decision making. But before I start, please allow me to thank our 11-member organization Novum here in Slovenia to have taken up the initiative to put this very important topic on the ELF agenda. That is very much appreciated, and I think it comes very timely. We heard earlier already Mr. Kalossi from the European University Institute in Fiesole to speak about this and to announce a new research. So I think we debate that issue at a good time. Thank you very much, Felicita Medved, ELF President and President of Novum here, and of course Sebastian Pickel for putting all this up here. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, ELF is a European political foundation which should not be mixed first and foremost with national political foundations in the different member states. Many of the speakers already this morning spoke about that aspect. European political foundations are the foundations at European level. Our membership is composed of national, so-called national political foundation, national political institutes, national think tanks. But we as ELF, as European Liberal Forum, we aim at the European level, trying to make a difference, and you hear me talking already, cautiously trying to make a difference, on European public policy issues, on European public policy decisions. Our 35 member organizations from across Europe, actually, they are very different in nature. Some are very close to their national liberal parties, others are very independent from those. Some of our members not even have a liberal mother party in their respective countries, so they are just movements without a liberal party in their country. Some members focus on research and studies. They issue very useful publications also within the ELF network, whereas others focus on the organization of so-called capacity building activities. They do trainings, they organize workshops. What we all share and what we all have in common in the European Liberal Forum is our liberal convictions. And there I want to start my little PowerPoint. I was asked to do this. Some of you might like it. I will touch upon issues in this PowerPoint, but I found so many issues which are more worthwhile talking about after the impulse that was given from previous speakers today, so that I will deviate a bit from what I have here. So, ladies and gentlemen, the goals and objectives of European Liberal Forum. ELF has an important networking function. It helps liberal organizations to meet and elaborate on common projects. You might wonder, what are these projects about? Our goal is to contribute to the debate on a variety of European public policy issues. ELF, and you see there the blue-colored countries represent the countries in which we have members. ELF and its members, we defined 4 thematic competence centers. These centers are the areas of work we have decided upon. And these 4 areas are the liberal solutions for a European economy, promoting the rule of law, the future of Europe, and capacity building to strengthen the European liberal dimension. This you can take as a frame, contents frame on what we all agreed, all 35, and in which we do our business, so to say. I just want to mention in this context the policy areas migration and integration and populism and nationalism. There are many speakers this morning which highlighted already the issue of rising nationalism throughout Europe and in candidate states and in the neighborhood. ELF, European Liberal Forum, works on elaborating on new concepts for migration and integration, which is of course also an issue of greatest concern in the EU and to liberals. ELF is engaged in combating populism and nationalism, and I have just come from a workshop where we debated with young liberals from Balkan countries, at which we analyzed the situation in the different countries and identified possible approaches to fight populism, to push back populism in Bulgaria, Romania, and Macedonia. So I'm very happy to have my fellow panelists here from Macedonia to see then what we can do together. This workshop event was an initial event of European Liberal Forum, and it will now lead in a media conference at which press ombudsmen from selected EU member states will present best practice examples from their respective countries. Another follow-up event to this last workshop in Sofia will look into the social media as a powerful and effective tool to push back populism. Last but not least, ELF will lobby decision makers at EU level and will call for swift and decisive action. And we think along the lines with Commissioner Neelie Kroes on, for example, introducing European-wide media framework. These are just developments of the last, actually, 4 days. Who are our target groups? So we see here 2 target groups, and I have to say both are equally important to us. You have the decision makers. Some of you from Slovenia might be very acquainted here, Madame Bratušek among them. We, as the European Liberal Forum, as the foundation of the ALDE party, Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe, we of course try to make a difference and try to deliver to our members of the European Parliament, to the party bureau, to the party as a whole. We try to deliver liberal policy recommendations on a variety of public policy issues, to feed them with our expertise from among our members, to feed them with the ideas we have, the impulses we received during our workshops, which we received in our studies. We try to pass it on to the lawmaker, to the decision maker, and this is, I think, a very important target group for us. At the same time, of course, the European citizen, the active citizen, is very important to us, because we absolutely, as European Political Foundation of the Liberal Party, we rely on you, on the citizen, on the active citizen in the European Union and beyond, to discuss with us, to give feedback to the political foundation. Because it was earlier already said, among others by Lucius van der Laan, that I don't think the approach should be Europe comes to rescue. We literally won't be able to do this really realistically, but we need to act together. We need your feedback to take into the work we do, to include it and then to channel it to the European decision maker. We cannot do this on our own in Brussels, in the Brussels bubble we sit. We literally do not know what are the best solutions for liberals in Bulgaria, in Romania, Macedonia, just to mention some of those countries where I lately have been. This is, I think, a very crucial point here, and I can only invite you to make that difference and to engage actively also vis-à-vis the European political foundations. I think that's very important. Of course, among the from among the decision makers, we have many allies. Also, from the active citizens throughout Europe, we have many allies. But what is very important to us as well, and I want to highlight it here, is that our programs involve not only politicians, not only interested, engaged, active citizens, but also representatives of the academia, journalists, NGO representatives, and other experts, which we can find to make and to create an added value to our debates and also to our publications. I think that's very important. We try to embrace the whole of society. I think that is particularly important for a European Liberal Forum as such. To get involved, to get heard, and to have ultimately an impact on policy formulation, this is what, to our mind, active citizenship is about. ELF wants to address the pressing challenges in Europe today. We want to generate liberal approaches, contributing in a constructive, pro-European and liberal-minded way. These are the very ambitious objectives. We are aware of this, and surely ELF has just started within the last 5 years of actually activities. We are 7 years old as an established organization under Belgian law, but really operative we are for 5 years now. Surely ELF has just started to pursue this ambitious path. The organization as such is active for 5 years, and we are now really making an impact. We started making an impact, to my mind, because we really got our members together. Trust was built among the members. They got to know each other. They work with each other. This is a very important component within our organization, because what we want in ELF is not to have little national projects, which also might be of use, but the European Liberal Forum as such aims at supporting the European dimension of public policy issues which are of interest to all of us in Europe. This is very important, and we sometimes push our members to work together and to build alliances and to cover subjects together, as this is the case here. You see here on that banner, it's not only an ELF conference as such, but we have the Institut Novum, of course, as the leader. Stichting IDI is part of it. The Austrian Liberal Future Forum is there, the Academy of Liberalism from Estonia, and of course, last but not least, the Friedrich Naumann Foundation from Germany, my own country. So, as much as the EU lacks a European identity, a European demos, ELF is lacking that as well. We are just shadowing what Europe is all about, I have to say. But believe me, we are working on it. Better to say, we are working towards it. ELF and other European political foundations can serve, I believe, I'm very convinced, as a catalyzer for such European demos. A good example, I think, for our work and impact on the decision-making level, a true best practice is a project which we conduct for a couple of years now. It's on the integration of Roma in Southeast Europe. Czech, Hungarian, German, and Romanian member organizations are involved in it. Experts with different backgrounds met in a series of workshops selecting the foci of a study. Among the issues looked at and analyzed in that study were housing for Roma, education and employment for Roma in a couple of well-selected countries, I think. Those countries were Bulgaria, Romania, Czech Republic, Hungary, and Slovakia. So, when this study was published, we actually followed up and extracted from this study in another workshop the liberal policy recommendations which we can draw from this study to have it ready-made, kind of fast food for our liberal decision makers and lawmakers, to have on one page these policy recommendations from the European Liberal Forum on that very important issue. And we actually then took the next step and launched these liberal policy recommendations in the European Parliament at the International Roma Day this year in April. So you see, we try to do this in a multi-step process. The think tank work integrated into lobbying of politicians, but not only politicians. Of course, we also invited journalists, we invited NGO representatives, all those actors in civil society who are interested in the topic. So now, in 2014, I can announce already, we continue this project, and we are going to hold training courses, actually, first and foremost in Hungary, in a city where a big Roma minority is living, and with the help of a liberal mayor over there, we are bringing together councillors, administrators from the city, from the region, and of course representatives from the Roma to discuss our liberal policy recommendations and put them to a test in a way. Can they really be applied, or will the local level tell us, what you all in Brussels have done and throughout Europe is not what we need? Let's see. But I think that's very important that we do not remain in this upper sphere of the European level, but that we really put to a test and involve everybody on a local, regional, national, and European level. I think that is very important, and we really strive and try to make a difference there. Yes. Before I finish, because of course there are so many issues where this is just an example, a real best practice example. Before I finish, I'd like to emphasize that we at ELF work increasingly in interconnected projects over multiple years, and increasingly improve our outreach and impact on decision makers on the EU level, but also on national, regional, local levels. I think our diverse membership is our greatest asset, and the way we liberals work in a subsidiary approach is helping us very much to build trust and also to be credible. I think that is the most important. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And from the European level, now we are going to the area of former Yugoslavia. So I would like to invite Jelena Milic to prepare her presentation.
Hello everyone, thank you for inviting me over. It's really a privilege for me to be here today, really a privilege. I have decided to structure my presentation in three short parts. Firstly, I will give you a brief picture of what's going on right now in Serbia. Then I will give you also brief information on how most prominent political foundations in Serbia work, namely American and German political foundations, because we don't have Serbian political foundations yet. And then I will briefly tell you what Center for Euro-Atlantic Study, self-proclaimed socio-liberal think tank, is doing these days. I believe, and Sebastian was looking for us, that he found us like one of these indigenous Peruvian, tribes that are wandering through Amazon, because we are really not linked to any political party formally. Anyway, we had in Serbia election last year, and this election gave, not surprising results. Political coalition that was more pro-democratic, pro-liberal lost due to various reasons. New government, new composition. I think we would insult European People's Party if we would say that these people are something like them. These are people with a huge inheritance and backlog of promoting wars in the 90s in Balkans, etc., etc. I call them newborn Democrats. Due to various reasons, I suppose, some blackmails that the Western international community has on them. Luckily, they have agreed to push and reach some kind of an agreement with Kosovo, which is a great thing that many good political parties, NGOs and think tanks and activists in Serbia have been working on all these years, but they just came on the right moment. The Western international community, in order to praise that, has been ready to turn a blind eye on many other negative trends that are happening in Serbia. I dare say in Kosovo as well, with regard of the democratic trends, liberal trends, etc. So this is where we are at the moment. I publicly describe the situation in Serbia as a process of Putinization. That means that a few leading politicians, particularly the deputy prime minister, Mr. Vučić, who at one time was Minister of Defense, coordinator of all intelligence agencies, coordinator for fight against corruption within the police, and vice president of Serbian government, and president of his political party. I think I forgot something, but nevertheless. So we were witnessing the deterioration, denigration of the separation of power, of the democratic institution. We were never very good and successful in creating strong, independent institutions and dividing the power in last 13 years of our consolidation of democracy. But hey, bearing in mind how many obstacles Serbia as a country in transition has had, we did something. I mean, not all countries in transition had to deal with the ICTY and inheritance of war crimes of the previous regime. Nobody shot their, democratically elected pro-liberal prime minister. Nobody had to deal also with Kosovo, which is a pretty unique case with the separation of Montenegro. So we really had a lot at stake. And bearing all that in mind, the previous administration did achieve something. But now we see that almost all of that is eaten by the fact that Western international community is overpaying the fact that this political setup has reached some kind of agreement with the Kosovo political leaders. It is just the first agreement. It does not cover all the aspects, and they are already undermining some and not honoring some of the items in this agreement. In this environment, most prominent political foundations that work in last year or two were German political foundations. Unfortunately, we as a liberal think tank don't fit under Friedrich Naumann Stiftung portfolio because they only support political party. We are friends with them, we know each other. They were training many of our friends from former political party called Civic Alliance of Serbia, but they don't support think tanks and NGOs, just a political party. While in the same time, Friedrich Ebert Stiftung and Konrad Adenauer Stiftung did a great job of what? Not promoting democratic trends and activating population for taking active role in politics by promoting their political parties' visions on Kosovo and how Serbia should progress towards the EU. So that was the situation with Konrad Friedrich Ebert, who was much softer on Serbia, demanding Serbian early beginning of the accession with the EU, and Konrad Adenauer bringing all their MPs to tell us Serbia new conditions, which was justified, by the way, and they worked at the end. But it had nothing to do with the more general, broad work of, at least how I see it, of the political foundations. They put too many eggs on these new radicals in one basket, on SNS, I would dare say, and they had a huge mistake of dealing with former President Koštunica, who is hopeless nationalist. Some mistakes, I think, they will slowly recover from. The American political foundations did much better work simply because they were alienating themselves with the better part of the political spectrum, helping staff, helping membership to take an active role, etc., and providing us with a pretty decent pollings, which were always relevant because in Serbia on several occasions. We got really pollings that fooled even our president, I think, into making some wrong political decisions. So my predecessor mentioned that in LFA you have NGOs and liberal think tanks from countries where there is no liberal party. Our experience is slightly different. We were set up in the period when Civic Alliance of Serbia, the first almost liberal party, was dissolving, and when it was actually in transition to another liberal party called Liberal Democratic Party, which still exists in Serbia, hopefully. At that time, a few of us did not like the idea of suffocating Civic Alliance. We didn't hear good reasons, and in particular didn't like the fact that they mingled themselves with some regional political characters that you might not need to know, like Milo Đukanović and Bebo Popović, and we said no. We are going to set up a think tank, 3 founding women from the Civic Alliance who were trained by Friedrich Naumann, by DZX, etc., and with several auxiliary founding fathers, not all of them being liberals. Our major hero is Eric Hobsbawm, actually, the person who said that the liberalism is the only ideology, that social democracy wasn't any ideology because it completed everything. And other great thinkers from the United States, like John Rawls, but also Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert. We followed them vigorously. We also declare ourselves as an atheist think tank and honor a lot of work of late Christopher Hitchens. We follow still a lot of work of DZX and would like to be, once upon a time, Brookings Institution of the Southeast Europe, if possible. But we'll see. At the moment, we are fascinated with 2 guys from Denmark, Eriksson and Stiefeld, who are writing about these discontents, democratic discontents of multiculturalism, and we think this is an excellent approach to debate the future of liberalism and to be frank and see what are the downfalls of multiculturalism and how to address it towards the interculturalism. Speaking about the organization itself, there are 5 or 6 of us. We are not expanding a lot because we are dealing with some tough issues, including naming our current chief of staff of Serbian army a war criminal and demanding him to step down and to be transferred to the ICT Vice. And for some other reasons, we are not expanding in number of staff, but you can find our biographies here under this section. Who we are later. I don't know with this mouse, I'm sorry. It should go down somehow. We also maintain regular articles on our central page related to security issues in Serbia, Serbia-EU integration, etc. All relevant to the security sector reform in Serbia, and Serbian EU and NATO communication. This is what we follow. Few days ago, we got data from our server host that we are an NGO in Serbia with the biggest number of visits on monthly basis. That the key research topics, this is the second article, are related to security sector reform, missing reform that nobody in Serbia wants to speak about, and we have, like this boy who cries wolf on several occasions, trying to explain that no EU integration or their progress with Kosovo will go properly if we don't complete this issue. We work in 5 different programs. One is security sector reform in Serbia. Another one is advocacy for full Serbian EU and NATO membership. The third one is transitional justice with a special focus on the effects of the transitional justice in countries which opted for non-violent means of regime replacements in the absence of the security sector reform. And we have the third one called open government, because we are kind of pushing for more accountability and openness of the institutions. And my pet program is called Liberalism, Globalization, and Human Rights. And under this program, I'm proud to say that we are the only member from the Southeast Europe of the International Coalition for the Responsibility to Protect, which is a humanitarian security norm that advances mechanisms for prevention and for responses to mass atrocities worldwide. So this is more or less what we are doing. We keep this website not only as the typical NGO basis of our activities. We have this regular section called In Focus, in which we are trying to educate our readership, hopefully LDP members and other NGO activists, on what are relevant world affairs, particularly related to liberal and human rights issues. We have had a huge presentation on what's going on in Syria and on the debate in General Assembly of the UN about the Secretary General report, etc. And of course, we publish, I think it's the only and first liberal quarterly. It's in an electronic form. I just printed some for you here. We already published 4 of them. It's called The New Century: Liberal Responses to Global Challenges. So far, we disseminate that to more than 10,000 addresses, 5,000 in Serbia and 5,000 in English language and abroad. And I have to say that one of the first readers who came back to me and said, "Great work, Jelena," was Mr. Pierre Mirel, and I'm really grateful to him for that. In that magazine, we focus mostly on the challenges that Serbia is facing towards the EU path in each issue. Then we open one global topic that we think has been poorly covered in Serbian media, and one regional topic. In this issue, we paid the focus to something we thought was totally undermined in Serbia: the rallies in Bulgaria. We were following Turkey, we were following Brazil, but things were happening in front of our very eyes, and very similar situations. So we had an exclusive feature story from Javor Siderov, who is also a colleague of Dimitar Bechev from Council on Foreign Relations, on what is actually going on in Bulgaria, with some positive, I think, outcome at the end of the day. So in the next issue, we asked them to help us see how is Russia influencing energy sector in Bulgaria, because we think this is something that is happening in Serbia as well. In this issue, we also debate how is European Common Security and Defense Policy going to be reformed in the forthcoming EU summit, because we advocate that, bearing in mind that the Lisbon Treaty gave it some more strength, that it can be an auxiliary tool to help security sector reform in Serbia in the absence of Serbian path towards the membership in NATO. At the moment, Serbia is individual partnership action plan negotiation with NATO, which can provide for some reforms, but these reforms are rather reforms related to the standardization and operationalization of the army, but not on the political structure and the architecture of the security sector, which we think needs to be teared down and built up, and we are looking for the possibilities how the EU Common Security and Defense Policy can add to that. So that's it for now.
Yes, thank you very much. And now I'd like to invite Ana Radicevic from Sarajevo.
I manage NDI's regional political party program. Okay. And I would first like to thank the organizers. Rob has already done that this morning, but I would especially like to mention and thank both Felicita and Sebastian for our cooperation in the last 3 or 4 years. The Novum Institute and the two of you personally have always been there for us and for our joint partners in Southeastern Europe in terms of collaboration, in terms of cooperation, in terms of offering advice and the best practices from Slovenia. And whenever we would pick up the phone or email these two individuals, they were there to help their sister parties and organizations in Southeastern Europe. I thank you, Jelena, for using the term. We often have these, not debates, but conversations in NDI about referring to the region as the Balkans, or what my personal preference is as Southeastern Europe, precisely to avoid the negative connotations and to open the sort of more optimistic and favorable and positive attitude to the region. In NDI, our programs, we have 3 regional programs. One is for Roma, the other one focusing on legislations, on parliamentary regional program, and the third one that I manage is our political party program. These 3 programs more or less work in up to 10 countries in the region. In a regional political party program, we mostly focus on Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, on Serbia, Macedonia, Montenegro, Kosovo, Albania, and Romania, and sometimes we invite Bulgarian partners and political parties. One of the, what we focus on the most in our programs is really political party policy development. And in this process, it's, of course, has been very important, crucially important to help setting up political party foundations in the region. Less so think tanks. We work with party training centers, party political academies. Jelena has said, and rightly so, that there are no political party foundations in Serbia. I'd say that in this process, in the last 4 or 5 years, that's exactly true, because there is no legislation that would actually define the role, define the legal status of these organizations in most of the countries of Southeastern Europe. But many efforts have been attempted, and in reality, there are organizations which do function as political foundations in Southeastern Europe. As was said earlier this morning, these foundations, these organizations have many models, many ways of the way they do business in these countries. Most of them are registered according to the laws on civil society organizing, and in their own internal statutes, in their own internal documents as how we run, what it is that we do. Many of them are closer to their political parties, affiliated to political parties. Many of them do say that they don't obviously want to have more of an independence, precisely because they want to open up debates that are not that do not take place and that are not maybe even natural for political parties because of the many issues that they raise. Crucially important, of course, is a matter of finances. Almost all of these organizations, all of them actually, depend heavily on outside funding of the American organizations, of the funders from the European Union, and that's a huge impediment for their own internal organizing and their own even existence, very similar to, I have to say, women's organizations in political parties, which do have obligations, which are expected to do things and conduct activities and perform on a number of various issues. But however, we only have one political party in this region that does have set aside funding from the party for the activities of the women's organization, and that's in SDP Croatia. In terms of the way we see the roles and the activities of these organizations in Southeastern Europe, most of them really say that they function. Their activities are around trainings, organizing conferences and different types of events, usually for political party activists and sympathizers or many individuals or groups who would be interested in politics, in all kinds of debates in their societies. That they also say that they're engaged in international relations, which is of course extremely important, creating networks, talking to each other, exchanging, sharing best practices. But unfortunately, and this is why we precisely in our program focus on policy development, policy research, policy analysis, policy formulation remains the scarce, remains really low, and there are very few organizations in Southeastern Europe who actually perform these activities and which do it well. A number of impediments these organizations have faced, and in our work with them, we observe they're still facing. Political parties sometimes support them, sometimes understand the reason for their existence, sometimes, and too often, some political leaders see them as competitors, shut them down, want to hush their activities, and see them as sort of new power spots. And in other words, very often they just don't receive as much support and as we would like them as we would like to see they do. We in NDI over the last 4 years have helped these organizations meet, exchange best practices, learn from each other, one another. Only Sebastian and Felicita were engaged in a number of these interactions. For example, Sebastian would travel to Bosnia to work with LDS on more than one occasion and share the best practices of Novum Institute with them. In terms of what we do and how we see them in NDI, in regional party program, obviously we see political foundations and similar organizations as a conscience of their societies, and why we find them very important. Over the last year, in our work with youth, and I've been talking to Rob about that yesterday, it's quite stunningly pessimistic, the situation with the youth in Southeastern Europe, the situation with youth within political parties, about them feeling that they don't have a say. Something was said about that earlier this morning, and that what they do say, and whenever they say it, it's not heard. It's not heard in political parties, it's not heard in other similar organizations. It's quite depressing to see how the Felicita was saying that this morning, and I was second that I support it full-heartedly. It's absolutely not true that the youth in this part of the world, in Southeastern Europe, is not interested politically, doesn't want to be engaged. They do. They just don't see and hear that their voices are being heard. And if they do organize themselves, they organize themselves in organizations which are supporters of different sports teams, which are becoming violent and aggressive. And we see the rise in the last 4 or 5 years of peer violence, of domestic violence engaging youth in this part of the world, especially. We, from that perspective, work with these organizations that are close to being political foundations, the way you understand it in the European context, to influence creation of programmatic parties. So to work and to exert pressure in asking political parties we work with to sit down and have a stand on any given issue in a society. So basically, we try to influence creation of programmatic parties rather than personality-based political parties. NDI has been engaged over the last year or a couple of years in a number of conversations with the European partners, with other democracy and party assistance providers and organizations, in a number of conversations on how to create conditions for the emergence of these programmatic political parties. And obviously, we here in this room understand why that is important. I will just quickly highlight the recent finding and the recent research conducted by the International IDEA. NDI was involved in this endeavor about why these programmatic political parties are important. Obviously, they center on clear sets of policies or programs rather than only patron-client relationships or charismatic leadership, for example, and they're more likely to listen to and reflect citizens' voices. Such so-called programmatic parties are accordingly of central importance in a representative democracy. I'm not going to focus more on why they're important, why they're crucially important for any democracy. The research says that there are a number of impediments which do negatively influence creation of these parties, and when we talk about how we influence our interlocutors, societies we work in, the structure of society is clearly a very important element. Urban societies tend to be more receptive to programmatic parties than rural ones, and we are talking about political foundations. It's extremely important that they draw these urban populations in our countries. Unfortunately, ethnic identity still remains and is crucially important and is an impediment to creation of programmatic parties. They are hampered in contexts where there are deep ethnic divisions accompanied by substantial differences in average incomes. And in such cases, voters may link their own success with that of their ethnic group. So it's a matter of collective identity, it's a matter of collective success in given circumstances when you're individually not likely to succeed or make many results in your own life. One of the recommendations of this research, of course, and that's relevant to our subject matter today, is political parties' relationship with civil society, and let's say in between these two political foundations. Voters, this research suggests that voters who are not primarily associated with a political party, but rather with a civil society organization may be harder to co-opt in a patron-client relationship. This is because such voters fall outside of the party networks that oversee client behavior. In the research, there are many recommendations. Important for us in NDI is that the individuals who conducted the research are advising party assistance, democracy assistance organizations to facilitate and strengthen dialogue between political parties that are primarily programmatic in nature and civil society groups that are programmatic in nature. That's why, and we in NDI, with our interlocutors and partners from the European Union, really put an emphasis on the important role that party foundations and think tanks play. They also say that it's very relevant to link up with organizations that focus on socioeconomic development to better monitor and impact upon the conditions for programmatic parties. In our work and with the leverage that we bring in our work with parties themselves, we make an emphasis, advise political leaders, ask them to establish links with relevant issue-based civil society organizations such as social movements or interest groups, and to engage party members in policy debates in order to deal with shifts in programmatic contexts when they emerge. I would like to thank you again for inviting us, and thank you for being partners in this joint endeavor. And if there are any questions, we're of course here to answer them.
Yes, thank you. And before I open the floor also for some comments or questions from the audience, I would like to invite Bojan Maricic from Macedonian Center for European Training to present the institution, organization.
Yeah. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Madam Krasovets. I'm very honored to be here today and to have the chance to address you, and very grateful to my old friend Mr. Sebastian Pickel that invited us to participate in this forum. I will try to tell the story of the Macedonian Center for European Training, but also through that story I will try to tell the story of Macedonia for the moment, or at least in the last 5 and 6 years. Beside the character of our organization and the projects we work on and the areas we're interested in, I'll try to sketch the context of the Macedonian society and the political situation, which definitely determines the work of our organization. Macedonian Center of European Training is a membership-based organization registered in 2002. Initially, after the training process of the INVENT agency, which was at that time governmental agency of Germany for building capacities of the region of Southeastern Europe. So this INVENT agency trained 21 certified trainers on the European Union integration process. So at this initial stage and in the first stage of our development, MCT was mostly committed to researching and training and teaching on the process of European integration. We perceived practically the entire integration only as a process, let's say maybe unjustifiably neglecting the actors within. The mission of our organization was and is to contribute to the accession of Macedonia within the EU by means of evidence-based policy research and also development of policy areas, advocacy and capacity building. The vision is that we see the organization as a catalyst for enhancing standards and capacities of governments, industries, institutions, and individuals at both Macedonian and regional, if possible, European level. Very wide range of expertise is encompassed in our organization. Beside the general knowledge on European integration process, the structures and institutions of the EU, the legal system and decision-making business, decision-making process, the application and competencies of the European Union law within the national system, we are working on specific policies and policy areas of the EU, named on the slide. But lately we are focusing more on EU enlargement and budget of the EU part, which is relevant for Macedonia. Also, we have perceived as important the regional processes of stabilization and association, the IPA programming, and all the other possibilities for strengthening the civil society through the European Union framework. So we can say that there are 3 phases of programmatic development of our organization. The first one was a training institute from 2002 to 2006. The second one, monitoring and watchdog, having the training component remained within the organization, and the newest, let's say, phase of think tank organization from last year on. So why all these developments, or let's say why the transformations? The first transformation happened, as you could see, in 2007, just because in 2006 we had switch in the government. We have a right-wing populist government from then on, and analyzing the government manifesto and also the entire discourse that government imposed in 2007, we have realized that actually the mere capacity building and training of the institutions, municipal governments, NGOs and public administration is not enough to help the process of European integration anymore. And that's why we have decided to switch to monitoring and watchdog and practically pushing the government for further European integration, because we have realized that European integration is not priority of the government, and it demonstrates like that today. So within this period, we've been publishing accession watch reports, which is one of our key policy products. I'll present it a little bit later, but in this business of monitoring and watchdogging, we became part of the group of civil society organizations or civil society activists that were treated as one of the state enemies, or let's say opponents of the government and opponents of the societal movement. In 2012, after several years of actually not only a backlog but also a blocked situation of Macedonian European integration, we know that since 2009 on, when the European Commission has recommended the kickoff of the accession negotiations, we have this. We have the same situation every year. The European Commission is proposing accession talks to start, but on the other hand, we have the name issue with Greece, and in our opinion, we had much deeper problems in the society on democratic plan beside the name dispute. And therefore, we have realized last year that actually we need a second transition. And it is very related with what we have heard today in all the speeches. Why we need a second transition? First, because we think that the liberal values are at very jeopardy of under the strike of the populism. Or speaking in the language of the European Union, the political criteria that embrace the liberal values, such as individualism, individual rights, respect of human rights, rule of law, democratic institutions, respect of checks and balances, all of this is under strike of the populist wave in Macedonia. And second, that we need to get deeper into the European integration, or let's say the Europeanization of the country, and get relevant data so we could produce more relevant policy recommendations and policy prescriptions. That's why we see it as really serious plan to develop in the future several years. And what our plan is to increase the research and analysis component on account of advocacy, training, and monitoring and watchdog. You could see on the slide that by 2015 we plan to have up to 60 or more than 60% of our work to be committed to research and analysis, and only helped and complemented by advocacy, training, and watchdog. The flagship products of our organization are, beside the trainings that I already mentioned, we have performed in the last 10 years more than 7,000 days of trainings. We have this so far 18 quarterly accession watch reports in which we closely follow every 3 months what's going on and what's new in the area of European integration of Macedonia. 4 comparative analysis of the progress reports. In the last 4 years, we make comparative analysis of last 4 progress reports for Macedonia. From, let's say, this year it will be from 2010 to 2013, and we are following actually how the government performs regarding the problems noted in the progress report. Then on the terrain of advocacy, we have more than 15 policy briefs and 2 policy studies, and a much larger number than 30 conferences and public debates regarding presenting our ideas, our policy prescriptions, our policy briefs, etc. Beside these 2 policy studies, we are now in the period of inception of a research component of our organization, which will be mentioned in a minute. If we speak about our achievements, very often think tank organizations like ours are frustrated in a society like Macedonia because we work a lot, we make the social networks, we are linked with the international community, we are linked with some parts of our institutions, but it is still difficult to push for specific items of the European integration. So Anyway, we can say that the Accession Watch reports influenced the speeches and positions of many members of the parliament, especially the opposition members of the parliament, regarding EU accession. And also, we have a regular place in the political talk shows in the media or investigative stories on the European integration, although I have to say they are decreasing in the last couple of years. Our policy briefs influenced these regular sessions of the National Council of European Integration within the parliament. And also, there's a great chunk of our influence in the IPA 2 programming process, because our director is a member of the, actually one of the steering committees for one of the IPA components, so we have word there. We also have performed several trainings of members of parliament and political academies of social democrats and liberals and other smaller opposition parties, but also for some public administration structures. We have close partnerships with several members of the European Parliament that resulted in a number of contributions in their resolutions on Macedonia. Especially we worked with Zoran Thaler and Richard Howitt. Also, we make regular contributions to the delegation of the European Commission in Macedonia in attempt to influence the annual progress report of the European Commission. I'll get back in a second to our active projects and sources of funding, but I need to sketch the challenges of our work, and which I believe it is a common ground of the work of all the political think tanks in the region. In Macedonia, currently, we could freely say that we have this dysfunctional system with anti-liberal and anti-democratic trends. And if you mention, Mrs. Milic, that in Serbia it's called Putinization, I think in Macedonia it's much rather Erdoganization, just without the money. So if we just pick up some details, we have a census, population census, that collapsed 2 years ago, just by the decision of the government. A suspicious electoral process every time we perform elections. We have officially prisoners of conscience, so political prisoners, journalists, opposition leaders, local politicians, etc. We have intimidating and oppressive process of lustration that creates new victims instead of repairing the, let's say, the flaws of the previous communist system. We have severely oppressed media freedom. We have severely oppressed civil society organizations and activists, which are treated as others, enemies, traitors, etc. We have brutally imposing the conservative value system with dominantly religious and, let's say, nationalist context, problematizing freedom of choice regarding, let's say, abortion, promoting family values and numerous family with 3 children plus, condemning liberalism and individual rights as something that is imported from the West and actually that is aimed to destroy the Macedonian national tissue, national history. And all the liberal values are practically jeopardized. Whatever you would like to name, individualism, free market economy, human rights protection, pluralism, rule of law, it is all under question with the government. So I think also I missed to mention the name issue, but I think it goes without saying, because we already know that this is something that was one of the major problems of our country, but this is something what actually was taken as this populist government as very nice contesting issue to strengthen their positions and to actually make a deterioration in all the other areas. So what was mentioned by Madam van der Laan, I think was really important. And I think it was a key point that I wanted to make in my presentation. The liberal structures in Macedonian society are deeply frustrated and Euro-disappointed, I would say. On one hand, let's say we are under pressure of the government, and on the other hand, the European Commission has a tacit agreement with the government to just rubber stamp the reforms, the so-called reforms, You remember the high-level accession dialogue? We were strongly opposing that approach of the European Commission because the European Commission chose to adopt bureaucratic, technical approach in treating very important democratic issues that inevitably involve values. So I think that could be my message to the liberals of the region and to the European Liberal Forum, that liberals must raise their voice against the Macedonian regime if they are to save confidence of the liberal structures in Macedonia towards European Union and towards this, the whole process. So we shouldn't trade the democracy for stability, although sometimes it was needed sometimes at some point. And also, we shouldn't frame the criticism of the country regarding the nationalism. It is better to criticize it regarding democratic values, because if we criticize it regarding the nationalism, it might be only a mobilizing factor so for our government. So we have realized that the framework of analysis of European integration through the terms of accession partnership, national program for approximation of the law, IPA, progress report of the European Commission, resolution, strategies is not enough anymore. And it is not sufficient, or it's neither sufficient nor effective in its spreading the message of European integration, or let's say Euro-optimism among the ordinary people and among the intellectuals already. That's why we have decided to shift to research of values, social networks, and mechanisms of Europeanization in public discourse, which is our first project that is mentioned over there, the Eurometer project funded by the Think Tank Fund in Budapest. By that project, we would like to explore the political culture in Macedonia and how an average citizen perceives terms like democracy, liberal values, Europe, European Union, etc. Because we think and strongly believe that there is a discrepancy between the dreams and ideals of the people and their actual everyday value system in the countries where they live, which means that we all want to go to Europe, but we would also like to bribe some civil servant or some judge to fix our problem. The second project is, I forgot to say that the Eurometer will practically make a field research combined with desk research on this political culture, and we will produce data but also reports and policy analysis on the aforementioned topics. Fitting the European framework for human rights protection is a project in which we are analyzing the let's say, consistency of Macedonian human rights protection system with the both European systems of human rights protection, Council of Europe and European Union. Because we don't have real negotiations, we had to invent a project called shadow negotiating teams, which are actually sketching the negotiating positions and closely pushing the government to start the negotiations and to include civil society activists in the negotiating teams. Then we have a project that is working that is called Second Hand, or the New European Narrative for Macedonia, involving scanning of 6 main political parties in Macedonia, including the Liberal Democratic Party, on how they cover in their manifestos the issues of Europe and European integration, and how they involve in their everyday business the European topics and how they perceive their role in promoting European integration. It is related to the presidential elections that we have next year in March. Also, we have trainings for several Roma initiatives or any other constituency that addresses us. Anyway, beside the situation and beside the problems we are facing, we see also chances for improving our work and for future development. And it is the high popular support of the EU accession still, even all this populist wave in Macedonia. The EU integration is still high on the political agenda of all the political parties. The Europeanization studies are still unknown land for the Macedonian think tank community, and we entered first in this area. The political parties try to reinvent the EU narrative, and we can be of great help in that regard. There is lack of quantitative and qualitative data on EU integration and societal Europeanization in Macedonia and in the Balkans. European Commission is still asking for allies on the European Union agenda, and we have on our disposal highly trained and educated staff and membership which are adjustable to the situation. So we are strongly driven by the context, and we are trying to adjust and to use our knowledge at best extent. And therefore, Madam Hartig and all the others, we have a lot of things to do together with our organization. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. I don't know how much time do we have. 5 minutes? Okay, yeah. Anyway, I would like to really thank you, all participants, for their interesting presentations, not only of their respective organizations, but also because they are trying to detect, to reveal us some problems, obstacles, challenges they have been facing with in the national environments or in the European, also on the level of the European Union. Maybe a chance to raise a question or comments from the audience.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was triggered by what Anna was saying about the kind of the legal vacuum within foundations have to operate, and I understand that in Slovenia even it's actually being discussed right now what role or what position political foundations will have. So I was wondering, and I guess it's a question to Susanna, but if someone else knows the answer, please let me know. Wouldn't it make sense, or maybe you've already done this, to have some kind of European lobby so that Commissioner Füle or whoever is in, has a chance to put pressure on these countries, that we say there's a European standard which we expect these countries to comply with, creating space for foundations to be able to operate without risk of intimidation, defunding, and all these kind of things, rather than letting each foundation fight it out in their own country. Can we help them in Brussels somehow?
If I may. Right what you say, Luis. I think we have to do this make it a dual approach. Surely, on European level, we could issue a lobby letter, talk to Füle's cabinet, but at the same time, I think there has to be approaches from the Slovenian, if we talk about Slovenia, from the Slovenian side on top of it. But I think that is a good idea, surely, yeah.
Okay, may I raise one question probably to Anna, but also to Bojan, I think. Especially Macedonian society as well as Bosnian society is marked by these ethnic cleavages, as you mentioned. This is really a problem when we are talking about political parties because of this strong prevalence of ethnic parties. And I wonder what kind of measures or what kind of steps it is possible to make by your particular think tanks or, let's say, in society, broader also in society, to overcome these strong ethnic cleavages. I think.
Yeah.
Bojan,
okay, sure. Well, I have to say that it is a growing problem in Macedonia, because you know that there are already 11 years from the Ohrid Framework Agreement, and there was a single attempt of making, let's say, multi-ethnic political party that will run the elections and win. And even if those attempts were in their inception, they were always, let's say, prevented or condemned by the large political parties that still prevent and preserve better to say, preserve the current situation of ethnic political parties, right-wing Macedonian Albanian, left-wing Macedonian Albanian. What we are doing is that we normally try to, let's say, ensure participation of Albanian intellectuals and Macedonian intellectuals on our conferences, on our public events, and to push this issue in the front of the table, and also to by that discourse, by inviting all the intellectuals, Albanians and Macedonians, to participate, giving them credit and equal right to participate. But I think what we could do is, what we could best do at this moment is to strengthen the civil society attempts. Because there are civil society attempts of social movements and organizations with multi-ethnic character, and I think we should encourage them first. And if they're strong enough in some period of several years, we might expect some cross-ethnic political party that might arise. The current political structures are obviously not interested in breaking this situation and borders.
Well, obviously, in NDI we have a slightly different role. We have in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Rob may correct me if I'm wrong, have been supporting political parties which do promote multi-ethnic visions, multi-ethnicity. We obviously have not worked with nationalistic political parties in Bosnia. We, in different programs of ours, we do try to promote political culture of compromise, of civility, of discourse, of compromise being a fundamental value, if you will, of providing and producing a win-win solutions in life. Through many of our programs, we talk about democratic norms and standards of political parties, of various different organizations and ways of organizing. I mean, in short, that would be the answer. I'll just give you one example of a young individual, I don't know if Dennis is here, who's been with us in our pilot project, Regional School of Liberal Political Party Youth. This outstanding young woman wrote, and we helped her, and of course with the help in the party, wrote a policy document with policy recommendations on introducing sexual education in primary and secondary schools in Bosnia. I mean, her policy document is just absolutely fabulous. Not only does she speak and talk about and raises the issue of importance of sexual education and the impacts, especially on women, in Bosnia society, but we've also linked her to the Vojvodina Pokrajinski Secretariat in Vojvodina, who now has under such a scrutiny, exactly, from the right-wing and nationalistic forces in Serbia, of their really like a study book for the primary schools, which
Brilliant books.
Brilliant, exactly. I really loved it, and I'm so sad to hear about the problems that they're facing right now and the attacks they're under in Serbia. So basically this book is also, and these policy documents are talking about what it means to compromise, why the notion of being beskompromisni borac for whatever is not really good, and it's not bringing anybody any good, and why we have lived together with each other and alongside each other and one another in Southeastern Europe, and why we will continue to do so in the future. I mean, that would be the short answer.
May I add something about the situation in Serbia? We formally don't have political party foundations, but we have public companies. So whoever comes to power first impose all their political cadre into the public companies. They have salaries, they pay cuts and bring back to the political parties. It's a brilliant system. And recently we have developed another one, and it's called National Councils of Ethnic Minorities. It's a parallel political system that we don't need in Serbia. In a country which is on a path towards the EU integration, which is a member of Council of Europe, which has a constitution which stipulates pretty well the protection of minority rights. This is just ethno-entrepreneurship and a way how political parties influence and overtake control over these national minority councils and the way they are funded. So we have, for example, an absurd situation in Serbia, that we have a parliamentary threshold for minority parties. We have national councils, and on top of all of that, Albanians in South Serbia boycotted the census. Now the state can't give the money to Albanian National Council, although they founded one, because they don't know how many of them they are. And from the liberal point of view, this is sheer ghettoization. This is not multicultural perspective. This is just ghettoization of these people. So we in Serbia also have to deal a lot with this idea of what political life is. And I think to have a pragmatical political parties is really must in Serbia, because what we have are either business interests or ethnic interests political parties at the moment. Thank you.
This critical approach. I would like to thank you all for your attention, and I think the lunch is served.